Sounds like she's ready for that.
Yeah. Good evening. This is the February 20th, 2025 Comprehensive Plan Committee meeting with SMPDC with us tonight. Roll call from left to right.
Don Hernan, 33 Murphy's Way.
Michelle Felicetti, 32 Red Brook Drive.
Kim Rollins, 49 Brock Road.
And in the box,
Dave Ells.
And Peg McDonald at Clarkswoods Road.
and over in the corner, who we are so happy to have tonight, is Michaela from SMP Southern Maine Planning, who is assisting us with our comprehensive, leading the charge on the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
And she is here with the next phase of data that we have available. So that's basically what we're doing tonight. There is no other agenda. The board wanted to see this. So then we can kind of look at this, review the two surveys we have, and know where our next steps are for either another survey, not to overwhelm people, but to just analyze the data a little better now that we have some, with the data that we have been given so far, the first set of data, and now this one from Southern Maine. So with that, and then this presentation will be available online once we get the full form. This is an abridged version we're looking at this evening. As soon as we're able to get the full version of this presentation that's been given to us tonight, we will have the town manager post it on the comprehensive plan committee page. And I'll see if she can even do it on emails, letting the people know it's out there if they want to go look at it. And those of you that prefer a paper copy, I'm sure the town can arrange a copy for you to be picked up if that's something you prefer. Okay, go ahead, Michaela. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be back. So there are 5 inventory chapters that I'll present the data on tonight: historic and archaeological resources, public facilities and services, natural resources, parks, recreation, and open space, and land use. And just something to note, these chapters lend themselves more to narrative data and to mapping compared to the sections we looked at last time lended themselves really well to graphs and charts and kind of tables of numerical data. So the format is a little bit different. There are still some charts in this, but overall these are more spatial and or narrative by nature. And like last time, I just brought some prompting questions as we look at the data. So when you're discussing this, when I'm not here, you can have these to go back to and reference. So as we're looking at these historic resources, thinking about what resources do you have, how do you interact with these resources today? What is the interest? What are the protections that exist? What might happen in the future, considering growth and development patterns, and does what may happen align with what you want to happen?
I'm just going to move this microphone towards you so people can hear you.
Thank you.
They're going to want to hear what you have to say.
So I wanted to start this off by noting that you have an active historic society, and it seems like it was formed pretty recently, starting in 2017 and becoming a full 501c3 in 2018. And I wanted to point this out because as we go through the comprehensive planning process and think about strategies and implementation, we want to think about the organizations that we can partner with and leverage to help make those things happen. And your historic society seems pretty active. I'm sure some of you are probably on it as well. No,
They're amazing. They do amazing work, and all the things in the hallway over there from Historic Data Online is presentations by Steve Lord, and they're fabulous.
Yeah,
Fabulous.
it's a great resource. Not every community has that.
So they
So
have a massive passion, and they do Acton Fair, have a table there. They're and tons of fundraising. They're fantastic.
cool. Okay. So going way back, I looked at some prehistoric history, and there is no evidence of prehistoric Native American settlements actually in Lyman. However, it's likely that there were temporary encampments by the Abenaki tribe, particularly around your ponds, because of the proximity of Lyman to the Saco River, since the Saco River was a major travel route. And so I just wanted to bring that up because while you have no
no, professional archaeological digs that have revealed artifacts from that time. There is a possibility that they could appear. Moving on to early European history, in 1660, 3 men purchased land from the Native American Fluellen, and they sold their title just 8 years later in 1668, and conveyed it to 36 others. And I'm sure you guys knew this, but I did not know that that Lyman was originally incorporated as Cox Hall instead of Lyman, not changing the name until 1820.
Just a question, you said purchase land from Native American Llewellyn. What is Llewellyn?
The name of the person.
Name of the-
There was
Gotcha.
not, there was only one name on the
Gotcha.
record.
That's
Thank you.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And this map is a document from the 1600s that shows
Wow.
parts of Lyman. It's, not very detailed, but it's
Yeah.
historically interesting.
Hmm.
So you have 19 documented historic archaeological sites. Again, no documented prehistoric sites. Most of
Wow.
your historic sites are domestic or residential, in other words. And, you might have more as time goes on and later dates become earlier. Our consideration of what's historic changes. So that could change. There are no listings on the National Register, but definitely buildings with a lot of character from several hundred years ago. One thing that your historic society does that I found really interesting was that they have every gravestone marked for your cemeteries.
Yeah.
And so what I did was I took that list and I pulled out the earliest death year per cemetery, just to kind of get a picture of, where were people living and how much of the earlier history do we actually have physically documented in the form of gravestones. So the earliest one is a William Larrabee in the Captain James Walker Cemetery, and the death year was 1785. And there are several in the 1700s, and then a lot in the 1800s. And I just showed the oldest 10 here, but the list has includes each cemetery in Lyman.
Oh, wow. We'll make sure to call Steve if he doesn't have, he probably does have it. He's good at that stuff.
It's fun to see with the patterns that emerge when you look at data in different ways.
Yeah.
That's why I love
Michaela,
that. Yes.
Are you saying that there's only 2 cemeteries as of today?
No. There are, I think there was like 80 or so.
Oh,
Or
okay,
150,
okay. I just
yeah.
wanted to make sure that wasn't a typo.
I think we have over 100 cemeteries, but I think she means true historic.
Documented history.
Okay.
Yes, documented historic sites. Yeah. That's pulled from the historic.
Right, and our
society
cemetery
website.
committee has that full list. Yeah, they have they've marked them all, they've geo-mapped them, they rock too, so they've done an amazing job. If you don't have that data, maybe I can see if Lindsay can get that to you.
Yeah, if they have, because I was looking at basically PDFs, so if they have Excel documents, that would be helpful, or like editable documents, that would be great. Okay, so we talked about the earliest gravestone per cemetery. You have some notable historic figures. Obviously Theodore Lyman, who the town's named after, but I thought the namesake was fun. He offered a barrel of rum and a bell in exchange for the name change. But I wanted to ask, or just bring your attention to this list, because I think it's interesting to include, people who stand out in the history of Lyman. And I was curious if there are folks from the 1900s that had a big impact on Lyman, or, more recent folks that, you might want to include on this list, people who shaped the town. So maybe something to think about.
I'll put a question mark there. I'm
Yeah.
taking notes and this will be we get together and talk.
Yes. And also, these were all men, and as a woman, I was like, I wonder what women have shaped Lyman, and if
If you didn't have women, you wouldn't have any of the men.
Dawn, you just scored so many points right now. I love you. Good job.
I don't need to score points, I'm too old.
Hey, your cookies already put you over the edge.
Oh, no. They're all gone right now, I can make some more.
Okay, so there's not, a ton of data for this section. It's a shorter section generally in comprehensive plans, but I guess my takeaways were that you have gravestones dating back to the late 1700s. Lyman used to have a different name, which could be just a fun, placemaking thing to consider. And that there haven't been a lot of professional archaeological analyses in Lyman. So if ever someone was interested and did one, maybe there would be more resources.
How would this potentially affect zoning? I mean, it doesn't sound like we have anything here that, conceivably, if you had a very old historical area or something, you'd have to have a special zone for it or something.
Yeah, I would say there's not a ton of direct relations to zoning. If you had,
Because they're not town owned any longer, basically. most of
Yeah.
them.
yeah. I know in Waterboro there was a subdivision, and when they were surveying the land, they actually found some historic sites. And so the subdivision had to go from 11 lots to 9 lots because that area could not be built upon. So those kinds of things can affect development, but that's more the development side rather than the planning side.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And my key questions from this section were, how can the comprehensive plan leverage the Historic Society as a key resource to protect your historic resources, or even to add a sense of community to places? For example, if Lyman's ever interested in creating a new park or adding
Right.
a
Resources.
story walk or historic walk, like how can you
For those
leverage
that are wondering what the heck we're talking about, just I'm going to say it quickly. Historic people we talked about is Horace Cousins, Bobby Coon, which is born in Lyman, successor to Boston businessman, and he provided funds for building the Cousins School, which I think most people recognize that name. Colby Jack Coons, or Bobby Coons, is born in Lyman, major league pitcher and a college coach and a member of the Maine Baseball Hall of Fame. I actually know people related to him
Oh, cool.
that still are here in town. Theodore Lyman, again, who was the nifty guy that traded a barrel of rum to change the name to Lyman. Nathaniel M. Lowe, which is part of the Murphy family, originally a family in Lyman, and he changed his name to Lowe because of an anti-Irish racism at the time. And then Simon Chadbourne, an early settler of Lyman, fought in the Battle of Bunker Hill, and the cemetery is named of him. It's also our Chadbourne Field, which is next to the library. It's a baseball field, or it's not a functioning, I don't know, it's a baseball field. It's a ball field of some sort that needs some love. So that's who we're talking about. So we're talking about those things just for people that maybe have some information on these people, or again, this is the kind of historic or archaeological resources in the section we're talking about, and looking for more people to add or women. So just wanted to have that for posterity's sake on the video as well, for those that are sometimes driving to work and listen and going, what are they talking about?
Oh, okay, great.
Sorry about that.
I can, since the presentation's not able to be shown on Zoom, I can try and read it all out more directly as well.
I think that's the only one I wanted to draw attention to. I think we'll be okay for the most. If it's something I feel like we should pop up, I'll just say really quick that when you're done saying this is what we're speaking of, because most of this they're going to know, like when you get to the schools, there's Lyman Elementary, Massey Basic. Those are pretty standard stuff.
Yeah.
I think the historic part of Lyman, a lot of people just aren't aware of, but that's really cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, the next slide is moving on to the next section. So did anyone on the committee want to say anything further about historic resources before we move on?
Nope.
Okay. So as we look at public facilities and services, really think about what you offer and where those are located, as well as are facilities and services sufficient? Are there any that you need more of? Considering, the demographic changes that might happen in Lyman's future, what kinds of facilities or services do you have now that maybe you won't need in the future, or vice versa?
I think that's we do know what those are, and I think the list is too long. Well, we have an amazing fire department, fire and rescue. We know they'll need to maybe expand down the road to have a station somewhere else as the town grows. We have the transfer station. That's
We could have areas for, like we discussed,
Yes.
the potential growth for DPW or,
Yep.
or, elderly housing or affordable housing or, different services such as that are gonna grow as the population gets older.
You were gonna have to think about a town cemetery.
a town cemetery because we don't have the Goodwin's Mills Cemetery is not owned by the town. That's actually a separate entity all on its own. That's one confusion. A lot of times when people move here or coming through, before the amazing people that took over managing it, it was in some pretty rough shape and they've done such great work over there, but that is not town owned. And the town does not have an active cemetery for our residents.
Okay.
Yeah, I just, are you, okay, you're on public facilities now?
Yeah.
Yes.
I just think something just looked interesting. It says public wells. I wasn't aware that we had public wells.
Well, we all do.
No, I mean,
No, those are private wells.
yeah, why?
Where's public wells?
It's a little circle with a dot in it.
There's at least
Oh,
one,
the
two,
one
three,
above- there's
4,
one
5, 6,
above
7, 8
Well,
of them.
Yeah, there's a bunch of them. I just was not aware that we had them, that's all.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's
maybe
one,
that's-
there's a public well.
Well,
at Bunny.
because they're public, it doesn't mean that they're owned by the town.
No, I wouldn't think so, but
There might be a subdivision out there or
Mhm.
half dozen houses that are tapped off of one well,
Yeah, I
which
don't-
makes it a public well.
Keywoods, I don't know if it's in Alfred or Lyman.
Right. Bunganut Park has its own well, which is technically public
Okay.
in that sense.
okay, maybe that's it.
I think it's like, if it's more than 6 on this, coming off that one well, that it's considered
Considered
public.
public.
Was that right? I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Thanks, Peg.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, really, when you look at that, there's not much in Lyman.
No,
I mean, you got, basically, you have town hall and you have the
Well-
fire station.
because the community library is not owned by the town as well.
No, it's
Right.
No, it isn't.
not. I know,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, which that confuses people as well, thinking it's part of,
Yeah, I think it's still a key institution.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Even
oh,
though
of
it's
course,
not-
yep.
But I wanted to ask what other institutions you'd consider key that perhaps aren't town owned.
Fire rescue, town hall. What else is it?
Well, so, look, I
Well,
think
Bunganut, I mean, that's,
Bunganut Park, we have Bunganut Park, which
maybe
is.
that's,
Is a facility that's being looked at and worked on. I do think, even though it's not owned by the town, I do think Goodwin's Mills Cemetery is, because it really is smack dab in the middle of town. Does anyone kind of figure
well,
that?
it's not public.
Right, but it's still kind of central in the town. It's like a big,
It can be shown. I mean, there's
Right.
no reason it couldn't be, but I'm just saying it's not a
It's
public
not.
facility.
yeah, maybe that can be noted next to those things, though, not town owned.
Yeah.
But as far as like what's in town for yeah, we don't have,
Not much.
we don't have a heck of a lot.
But that's
I
not
think-
surprising.
No,
It's not
oh, we
surprising.
have Kennybunk Pond, but again, that's just a little teeny parking lot and pond.
It's a public
They
facility
call
though.
it the Fish and Game, but that's not, well, it's not Fish and Game anymore either. I know. it's
But that's not in Lyman.
Yeah, it is. It's
On
35.
35, it's in Dayton.
Is it?
Yes.
Are you
It's
sure?
past the church. And that's where the town line is over there.
You know what would be interesting? It would be to,
I think. Maybe
to
I'm-
identify, all the farms.
Yeah, that would be really cool.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because how many do we have left?
Well, we got.
Actually, a
Good
lot.
question.
Well,
There's a very broad definition for farm.
yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would think, more than, basically like a self-serving, a family, something that serves the public. Do we even have any?
No.
Somebody that actually
Well,
grows and maybe
is
brings
Harris-
it to the
Harris Farm got
supermarket?
Lyman,
I'm
isn't
not sure.
Harris Farm?
No, Harris Farm's in Dayton.
Oh, see, there you go. That doesn't count either, sorry.
No.
Nope, I don't think we have one.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Maybe someone listening will say they know one and email or call or contact one of us and let us know.
I feel like when I was looking on mapping, there was maybe a lavender farm or a lilac farm or something in town. Does that ring a bell? It could just be a
No,
name
but
of,
remember Black Kettle Farm that you could up by Hamilton Road? Do you remember? You know, she's opening.
Right, but that is sold.
Yeah, but she's reopening it. I met her the other night. The woman that bought that property, the farm. is
Yeah, because
reopening
it's
it
under
to-
a special grant.
Correct, so
They
she's
have to-
reopening it to do
Yeah, they
farming
have
again,
to.
which will
But
be.
it's a private facility?
Well, she does like community, you remember you buy your pods of food from her.
Oh,
She'll be doing that again there, so
Community,
that will be kind of serving the community.
Yeah, they combine with a place in
COSs.
Alfred.
Yeah.
There's a farm in Alfred they combine with.
Yeah. So they'll be operating that again, but that's the only one I know of. Public facilities, schools.
yes.
There we go.
Schools, and it's.
So this is total enrollment for Lyman Elementary School and then Massabesic Middle and High. Obviously only the elementary schools in town, but where your students go. So interestingly, Lyman Elementary School enrollment has increased.
It's actually
since-
274
For
for
2025.
2025.
Two
If you're doing the next one,
For
so they
2025.
jumped quite a bit,
Wow,
271?
274.
Wow, that's a big jump. Hmm.
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's increased since 2018. And you can see there was a pretty big increase or decrease in
Yeah.
COVID, and then it's kind of regained since then,
Yeah.
which makes sense. And
Yeah.
that pattern holds true for the middle and high school as well,
Oh,
but
yeah, okay,
overall,
forgot about that.
their enrollment is
Yeah.
declining. Same with RSU 57 as a whole.
Well, but then of course you would lead the question as to why is the enrollment declining, and some of the answer there might be because there's not very much affordable housing for younger families. So they're not, if they don't settle in town, they wouldn't be going to the schools,
Right.
you
Yeah.
would think.
And some of it is because we have a higher ratio of an older population than of a younger population.
Correct.
Yeah, true.
Which I think that's where it's gonna be interesting. I'm just gonna leave it there.
Well, that's where zoning could maybe help,
Yeah, the high school
maybe,
is 858.
maybe not.
Yeah, the high school's not high, for this year.
Middle school.
Yeah, we just got the numbers last week.
Oh, what's it,
Six
this was the same?
No, it's 858. It's gone down by almost 50.
Mm-hmm.
Will you
Oh, for
send
this year?
me those numbers
Do
too?
you want the numbers for this year? Yeah, I have those. And actually, we have a school board meeting, we always get the current numbers. I'll send you those when I go next week to the board. I'm on school board. I'll write myself a note to send you
Sounds great.
the latest totals for high school, middle, and Lyman.
That would be great.
And you want arts use as a whole? Okay.
Yes, that would also be great.
Lyman's was actually 240 last week.
So the next thing I looked at was dispatch analysis. So kind of interesting thing here. There's a huge jump between 2022 values and then 2023 and 2024 values. And that is because the dispatch changed. So it was going to the state police. And then now it's going to the sheriff's office. And so that's why it's
Oh,
kind of hard to compare over time
Yeah.
I see.
too much. We can kind of look at the trend from 2020 to 2022 and then the trend from 2023 to 2024. But I'd say we'll need a couple more years before we really,
Smooths out.
understand
Okay.
what that looks like.
Oh, that's
So-
interesting.
So there could have been some additional incidents in 2021 and 22, but they just don't show up.
Well, what she's saying is, we were on the state police
Right.
service, but the thing is, it was also during COVID where we all kind of were stuck at home. So there's a lot of factors in there. We're
Yeah,
coming
it
out
just
of
seems
it,
like a huge jump.
but
My
that's
God.
not, or maybe it's the way the state police kept track
Yeah,
of our
I mean, that's
numbers.
just
as
Yes.
well.
You can't go from 90 in motor vehicle stops from 90 to 381 without some data issue there. I don't think.
I agree. I think that their
Some data-
tracking
there's
is
some data
and
issue.
data analysis are probably different
Mm-hmm.
between the two organizations.
And the same thing for welfare checks from 1 to 47.
Yeah.
Something strange.
I agree.
Anyway,
The total number of call reasons, there's
Yeah.
like 80 or so, so there's a lot, but I just pulled out some that I thought
Interesting.
were most interesting. Motor vehicle complaints, stops, accidents were by far the highest
yeah,
call reason, which makes a lot of sense. Overall, like any sort of, burglary, assault, kind of crime was very low in
I mean,
Lyman.
One thing can you, I hate to put this out there, but it is out there, is can you do drug? Is a separate line or no? Do they list it
I
separately?
don't remember if there was I can check that.
Like criminal activity for,
Well, the other thing that looks sort of strange is, I mean, for all reasons, it goes from 358 and 22 to over 2,000 and 23.
yeah.
There's something wrong with the data there.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm not saying that there has to be, but it just looks like it
I
doesn't
just
make
think for
sense.
like to the town to understand what things we are dealing with for even humanitarian reasons. Do we
Mhm.
have an epidemic here of drug use here? Do we have a problem that needs
Well,
services?
Yeah.
That's the only reason I asked that, so the town knows that this is a problem here in Lyman, if it is. It may
Yeah,
not be-
I'll
There might
double
not
check
be
that.
any data to that, but if there is and it can be parsed out, I do think that's an important, in this day and age, number to know.
Yeah.
and
No,
there's
that's a
gotta be
great point. I'll
something, there's
check.
gotta be something there that's strange between 22 and 23. That number,
It
even.
could have been when we were shifting though from one service to
Yeah, I don't know, I
another.
mean, either they're not counting, some areas
Right.
not being counted, was not being counted in 22 or 20, 21 and
It's
22
possible.
or
It
something.
it could be too that perhaps when the state police was tracking that, they list like Lyman only if they know for sure they're in Lyman, and
Could be.
other's they're
There's
like
gotta be a data
Lyman
issue,
Dayton
yeah,
or something,
somewhere.
and then
Okay.
it doesn't
It
get
doesn't
Anyway.
get pulled into this
pulled
definitely.
into the.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be something worth taking a look at anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, overall, no matter what you look at, the crime is for both, certainly for both, try it again, both burglary
Keep going.
and assault are pretty darn low. That part's good. The rest of it, I mean, it is what it is, but
Right.
those two are pretty low.
One
is
thing I did want to point out is the welfare checks, and I actually looked at my notes from our last meeting, and the I don't know if it's the fire chief or firefighter, whoever attends the meetings occasionally. He had said like one thing to note when we were looking at the population aging is that the amount of calls that they get goes up, and especially for welfare checks. And obviously the difference in the services kind of make it hard to tell, but it does seem like
Yeah.
Yeah, they broke a record. They broke what, 1,000 last year? Was that
Yeah.
1,000
I mean,
something
most
for
of which,
calls?
I think 2/3 of medical,
Yes.
Yeah.
something
And
approximately.
majority of our stuff was like, we were maybe what, 700 calls a year or 800 and we broke 1,000. And I think
Yeah.
the month of January was already over 98 calls. Is that right, guys?
I don't know what's on
Would
that.
that be some of the data you would include on that? Because they keep really good
They keep really
records
good records of
Yeah,
what
of,
it is.
like, of their assists to other towns having to come and assist their own calls.
Yeah, they,
and the
and then
types
what
of
their
calls.
event was. They're very
Yeah.
good at listing that. That's pretty easy data. They have it all. They're big on data hounds, so they have all that.
I'll reach out to them. Okay,
Wow.
so this is really too small to look at, which is okay, because the point is not to actually look at it right now,
Yeah.
but rather to know that this will be in the plan. And so what this is a matrix of organizations that serve Lyman, mostly nonprofits, some like state programs or federal programs, some town programs. And then I include their geographic scope, so whether they're Lyman specific, whether they cover kind of Lyman and the greater local area, whether it's regional or county wide, or whether it's statewide or larger. And then it's a whole list of different service areas. So things like veterans, seniors, poverty, persons with disabilities, home repair,
Oh, we were just
Clothing
talking
and
about, so
toiletries.
AmeriCorps seniors is home repair. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
yeah. And so it's kind of a big matrix that links organizations with service area. And so the idea here is to get a sense of kind of the social infrastructure that can support folks.
And how to try to guide them there if they need it.
Yeah. And your website does a great job listing a lot of these. So it's a great starting point. But it's just it's a good way to look and see, you know, what service areas, you know, are we really strong in? What maybe do we not have as much strength in? I noticed there weren't a ton of resources for veterans, childcare, refugees and immigrants, or transportation services. So those were some of the areas that there were fewer organizations that were kind of in those service areas.
Yeah.
And I'll send the Excel file so you can
Excellent. Yeah.
see it
Blow it up a little bit.
Yes,
Sure.
reasonably.
Wow.
Okay, so my key takeaways from this section were, I mean, considering your population size and kind of like the rural character of Lyman, you do have good access to facilities and services. You know, they're mostly not in Lyman, but you're not all that far from
Yeah, we're
from
not an hour away
services.
from these things.
Yeah.
Well, one thing, I don't know, maybe it's on here, but what we don't have really is any form of public transportation.
Right.
Yeah.
That's,
Well, we have no.
And the odds are we will never.
yeah, and I'm not saying there would be, because I don't know that there's enough demand for that to make that a viable option.
Not now.
You know.
I don't know if they're-
I mean, if people volunteer, you know, to give, you can, you know, call and you can get a ride, somebody will come and pick you up and take you to the grocery store or to a medical appointment or something, that's nice, but you really can't go, I mean, very extremely difficult to go on your own.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On
My other-
public transportation.
Sorry. My other takeaways are just crime rates are low, welfare checks seem to be increasing, which will probably continue given your aging population. And the key questions, what facilities are present, but maybe of increasing importance in the future. So if you had things to think about when you're getting to your implementation plan, right, are things like, okay, if I had $100 to spend on, you know, services in the community, like a hypothetical, you know, $100, which services would bring the most benefit to the community, or which services are we in most critical need of? And so trying to kind of get a sense of how you'll prioritize the different facilities and services that you might want.
I mean, I think overall, I think we're one of the few towns that doesn't have a community center. We don't have anywhere that
No.
elderly or children can gather to have a class. You know, if there was someone, I know, I mean, even though I'm kind of a nerd for tech, I mean, I still struggle. And like even Mass Basic High School, Mass Basic Educational Adult Ed came here. They've been dying to offer services in our town. We have nowhere for them to host it. So that's where a computer class for our elderly or for your kids who want to learn STEM, a STEM class that's held weekly or every other week. We have nowhere to host events in our town. I think that's our biggest downfall, to offer services to anybody. There's nowhere to be able to gather and have a community atmosphere. And I know they're planning a room, a larger meeting room when they, you know, redo the town hall, but you know, can that serve as a community center too? I don't know the answer to that. Maybe that's the plans. So the town manager, or maybe Dave would know better than me speaking to that. But I'm just thinking, you know, a community with rec center type thing that you could go and all ages are there. We don't have anything like that here. So that's, I think, the hardest thing for our town to try to offer these services is where do we put them?
Mhm.
Yeah, the library does a good job
Yes.
with kids though, and reading and things like that. They have a lot of activities,
Yeah.
but that really is.
But their community room is small,
Oh, yeah,
very
very
small.
small. Very small.
Although we had the best puzzle tournament the other
Mm-hmm.
night. I came in third with my team, but we did really good.
What kind of a tournament?
Puzzle.
What?
Puzzle. We
Oh,
had to
puzzle,
We had to
puzzle.
put together a 500-piece puzzle.
I
In
mean,
2
the
hours.
town hall land is 11 acres,
Yeah,
It's good.
you know, I mean, I know there's some wet around there,
mhm.
but, that could be a
Community is,
good area,
this does seem to be the central area for,
Because I was just thinking about what, sort of what Don was saying about, public transportation, which I shot down right away, which then I thought, no, Don, you're onto something. If we have.
What?
if we
Amazing.
have a
How did that
lot,
happen?
Say, near 35, or we have
Yeah.
a lot near Route 111, that we could almost turn into a parking ride.
Yeah,
And then you team up with Biddeford or Sanford,
Mhm.
with buses.
Yeah.
I know they already have buses, so I don't know if they could expand their route, which would be a cost in the future, a cost to Lyman, but it could bring you to, whether it be the supermarket or whether it be wherever, I mean, we have 2 larger towns that are right next to us that the elderly could take advantage of, like a parking ride, and it doesn't have to be that big.
that's a good point.
Can you write that down, Michelle? Because
Yes,
I'll
I
forget
can.
what I just said.
So park and ride,
Could you repeat that, Dave, please? Although I tell you, unfortunately, you watch people who go to the supermarket and they're waiting for the, say, the Biddeford bus. And there's at Walmart, there's a place down there that's, you can wait. It's pretty darn cold to be waiting there now,
yeah.
so.
Yeah, York County Community Action, their routes are shorter now,
Yeah.
so.
Is that the bus you're talking about, the bus that goes down 35? I mean, 111?
Yeah, I mean, York County Community Action goes kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're like, they have a
They
pool of
stick to
cars and
main
people.
roads.
Yep. They don't go into the Woolly Logs to get someone, but they do like go main routes to get people. I know Saco got a really good grant and they have a program that brings elderly to appointments to the grocery store and actually helps them get their stuff. And it's volunteers that all do it, but they have a really good program going over there. And potentially if there's a park and ride or something, that could lead to something like that here, but.
One of our daughters volunteers over in Kennebunkport to
Yeah.
drive people to appointments in grocery stores and stuff.
But I think a meeting point where like, say someone could drop their elder person off at a community center where they're gonna stay warm, to be picked up in 20 minutes on the way to work and, it could all work out, but again, that is something our town does need to think about, coming up, for sure.
And I mean, it's something else to keep in the back of our mind as I think about Line School. If Lyman was to ever get into a point where the district was building a new school for the town or adding on, the citizens of Limerick and Newfield put forward extra funds to expand the size of their gym to include bleachers with the understanding that their rec department has priority to use that gym.
Nice.
So that was something that
That's
the
a good,
town put
good
in
idea.
through their, through their taxes in a vote, agreed to pay the extra dollars to have a full-size
Do it all
gym
at
for
once,
town
yeah.
rec
Okay.
to utilize. So just something, if those
Think about it.
discussions ever come up, that's a way to kind of,
Well,
without
it's a
putting
much-
up your
yeah,
own
it's certainly
building.
a lot less expensive than building a separate facility. or something.
Right, they still pay for custodial
Right.
services because that's through the school. But, they do have priority for use of the building.
Anyway,
So the next section is probably the meatiest section of the entire comprehensive plan. It's the natural resources, forestry and agriculture chapter. There's a ton of data, ton of mapping,
wow,
lots of different things you could look at, lot to parse through.
holy cow.
So the first thing I pulled up is just the FEMA flood information. You have a few areas prone to flooding in Lyman, which makes sense. You have a lot of ponds. You have a good amount of forested wetlands, but not too many areas that have a high risk. Very few really, and a lot of that is in the demonstration forest area anyways.
Oh, yeah.
So it's not a huge concern. And in general, your kind of population centers are pretty far from your high risk areas as well, which I mean makes sense.
Because the town does, to my knowledge, the town doesn't own any dams, does it?
No, because the one on Bugnut is owned by Bugnut
Yeah.
Association. No, we
So
don't.
there's nothing there, okay.
This next map is looking at water bodies and wetlands in town.
That's pretty interesting.
So we have some freshwater emergent wetlands, some freshwater forested or shrub wetlands, and then freshwater ponds, lakes, and riverines. The riverines are pretty small to see on the screen right now. But because most of your wetlands are forested, that's different regulations than if they were unforested wetlands. So that's
Is that better or worse?
it's less of a barrier to development. Another thing I did was I looked at each of your ponds and lakes, have the area perimeter, mean depth, max depth, and fishery type.
Can I suggest a
Yes.
column on that? Because I think this would
Sure.
be extremely important in our town in particular, is whether there is public access to that pond.
Ooh, yeah.
That's a good question. That's a very good
Because
question.
there's people that get very upset that they don't have access to certain ponds, but the town owns no land there, therefore there is no public access. And that becomes a hot debate on some of the Facebook pages. So if we could imagine that, if there could be a column whether town there is public access, where the town, I think that would be very important
Yeah,
to list in that column.
yeah, I can absolutely add that.
Thank you.
Is Barker Pond?
Yes. There were, so in the data, you'll see all the variations of the different names. But in the presentation, I just put one name. Is Barker the more common name?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Most recent, yeah.
One thing that I thought was interesting is all of your water bodies are very shallow,
Yeah, they are.
but you do have a mixture of fishery types, both
Mm.
warm water and cold water. I thought that was kind of interesting.
Well, I would imagine the cold water and the warm water, where it's that, it's probably spring fed.
That makes sense.
Is it important to show whether or how the water body is fed? I mean, there must be there's gotta be some kind of incoming source, right? It's either runoff from other streams or other areas, or it's springs, I guess, right? What else is there?
I don't know.
I don't know if that's important or not.
Yeah, I suppose if it's
Anyway.
running in from a stream, it would be important when it comes to development, but.
Well, I was thinking in terms maybe of flooding and things, where sometimes areas, I was thinking more like something like, North Carolina, where there was Asheville, where the town there was in a valley and everybody was happy and everything great, nice area, and then all of a sudden, all the water that was upstream came down and wiped the place out because they weren't expecting the way the water flowed, which obviously is downhill.
Right.
So I don't know if that's any issue here. I don't think we have that situation. I don't think we have the demographic difference in height as much.
It's something we can look into for
Well,
the narrative piece of the inventory chapter.
But mainly, I think a good question you had is there public access? Because
I think that's most important.
otherwise, that's,
Because there's been some heated debates, unfortunately.
well, unless the town buys some land or
Right.
creates a public access,
Correct.
then it's up to individual
Correct.
homeowners,
Correct.
or landowners.
I think there are probably more right-of-ways than we really know about, Don, because when you're next to a right-of-way, over the years,
Yeah.
Yeah,
they just kind of get encroached upon.
Well, I remember from planning board times, yes, there were some of those issues,
well, like
Dave.
for instance, some of these, if there is a right of way, there is no parking, so there, people have
So
to
you got a
understand, it's
problem there,
like,
too.
because they're like, well, the town needs to make parking, well, they don't own any of the land to get there, you can't
You have to be dropped off.
take
and
someone's
picked up.
land, yeah, you have to be dropped off, picked up, or walk in.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Okay.
okay,
So the next sheet is York County statistics, not specific to Lyman as a whole. Interestingly, the number of farms has increased since 2002
This is yours.
by 4.
yeah,
However, that's down from a peak of 779 in 2012,
Mhm.
and now in 2022, that's the latest year of the data, it's 689.
wow,
In terms of the land of farms and acres, that has decreased, which indicates there are perhaps more farms that are smaller. So perhaps more people moving, since COVID to set up little homesteads or that sort of thing, and perhaps fewer large farms, which we can also see when we look at the average size of farms has
Yeah.
decreased from 84
10
acres in 2002 to 74 in 2022. But the market value of production has gone way up.
Yeah, imagine that.
Well,
Not
how much of that
sure.
is due to inflation?
Yes,
That's
I
just
think
it.
that's mostly due to
It's an
inflation.
astronomical jump.
Yeah, it's
That's
almost
huge.
doubled,
Yeah.
not quite, but pretty close.
Well, the value for production has basically almost doubled, yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
But
Oh.
Well,
Yeah,
I will
20
try to
was
see if I can map out farms specific to Lyman. I have not
Yeah,
done
I'd be
that
really
yet.
curious to know what we have here and their size. There's a lot of, I mean, I know a couple hobby farms in town, but I don't know what size they are.
Yeah.
A couple of what?
Hobby farms, like the ones that have the roadside
I thought you
stand.
said poppy.
Well, maybe it's a hobby
Well, they
I was gonna
farm.
say, what?
that could be the hobby, hobby.
Hey, everyone, you do you, so you know.
Okay, so this map shows soil suitability for development.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Lyman has a lot of soil considered very low suitability for development, 41%.
Wow.
Which is pretty interesting, probably because you have a good amount of, wetlands and ponds and such, and some steep slopes,
We're very
Not-
gravelly.
very gravelly, yeah.
Ledge, a lot of ledge.
Huh.
You also have a good amount of prime agricultural soils. And one thing to note is that prime agricultural soils and soils that are suitable for development are often the same soils.
Sure.
And so it's kind of, something every town needs to grapple with is if you want to send development to your soils most suitable for development, also know that that's the soil best for farming and agriculture. So how do you balance those things?
Right. And that was, as you'll see on the survey, that was one thing that people did mention. We did get quite a few comments on is keep the farmland, keep the agricultural land to be used for agriculture. So we did get a higher amount of answers on that on our surveys.
But that's really a function of the owner,
Really.
Yes.
because, I mean,
You can't force someone to get baby cows. No.
yeah, no, but I mean, a couple of recent developments, 10 house subdivisions, some of them are not on, put this nicely,
Rich?
not on the best land,
Uh-huh.
shall we say?
Mhm.
Yeah, but that's something that,
We can't control that, though.
a new zoning map could
Could help.
identify and potentially protect.
Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, and the other way on that too would be if for example, if in a general purpose district, you've got 5 acre zoning, and so if a developer wants to develop a subdivision, they've got to come up with 5 acres per unit. Whereas if it was, and I'm not saying it should be, but if it went to 3 acres, then conceivably you could you could make more money or see more development because it wouldn't take as much land to develop a subdivision. So I mean, and assuming.
Well,
assuming they
yeah,
only-
you can also put in there, especially if you do cluster, that, maybe
Right.
if it's in a zoning, a zone of agriculture and it is farmland, where so much needs to be set aside for farmland.
Yeah, and that's not in our zoning now, to my knowledge.
Right.
Correct.
That's an
That's
interesting
an
point.
interesting point.
That could help some too, because I don't know that well, anyway, we get too much. You don't need.
Yeah.
you don't need-
It would be a sin for a town like this in 20 years to have no farmland.
Correct.
Oh, you're absolutely
yeah,
right.
that would be,
100%
that'd
right.
be.
Right.
awful.
And that, that could happen.
Yeah,
It could if somebody came in with enough, wanted to do it, the development had enough funding to support the development and buy the land.
that'd be
So-
scary.
One tool, and I know this is, jumping ahead because we're not at implementation yet,
Right.
but just kind of want to give it to you now so you can mull it over. But it's called a density transfer charge. And basically, it's a really great way to preserve farmland and open space in your more rural areas that you really want to preserve farmland and open space. And then on the flip side, kind of spur development in your village areas or your areas where you're more okay with growth happening. So the idea is that it's basically supports, say, a farmer who's got a lot of land on the outskirts of town. Their kids don't want to farm anymore, but they don't want to. They want to make a living. They don't want to sell their land off, but they're like, that's my only option. If you have a program like a density transfer charge, they could sell their development rights on the farm. A developer could buy those rights, but instead of using them on the farmland, they would be able to basically get a density bonus on a designated area that the town's designated, like in your village area or
Oh, I
in your
see.
like where we're okay with growth happening area.
Okay.
And so basically it forever protects the land in the where the development rights were sold. So no
Yeah.
development can happen there. It is
Okay.
it's kind of like a conservation easement, but it also
Interesting.
makes money for the farmer and the developers like it because then they can get a few more units where
But
they
But
couldn't before.
that's not an impact fee, correct?
No,
Michaela?
it's not. It's different than
Okay.
an impact fee.
but
I'd like to, if you could give us more information on that.
I just-
That's an interesting concept.
Dave, I just typed it all up.
And
Say it again?
I typed it all up.
Okay.
And we're actually separate project at SMPDC. We're working on a housing toolkit. And one of the tools that we're explaining is a density transfer charge and also a similar version of it called a transfer of development rights. That version's a little bit more complicated. Anyways, so we'll have a nice toolkit for that, probably have a good draft for it in the summer. So
Okay.
I can send you other tools or like explanations of the concept now, but eventually we'll have a nice like how to do this in Maine kind of outline if you're interested.
the only thing that sounds strange about that, if the developer has to protect the land here to develop more densely over this other area, that doesn't seem quite fair. Why can't anybody do that, the same density in that particular area? See what I'm saying?
Because they're doing a good for the town by protecting the farmland. So they're basically paying for the extra development right, and then that money.
Benefits the farmer so they don't
Yes.
have to sell.
I
off their
understand your
land.
concept, it just
Yeah.
sounds to me, it just doesn't sound right to me. I don't know, I'm not a developer, I'm just.
Who ends up owning that farmland?
The
developer.
farmer, the
No.
farmer retains ownership of the land. He basically just can never
He can
develop
never
it past the
develop it.
farmland.
Gotcha.
But I'd be, yeah, interesting to see the legal side of that. I'm not, I don't wanna.
No, I'm just putting a couple stars
A little
next to
weird.
this conversation.
Little
so
It's
that-
complicated for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I'm just putting little stars next to it because if it's coming up this summer, we're not gonna be done comp plan, so I know we would all be very interested to look at it.
Yeah, if it would help something, I mean,
Yeah, if it would help us and help our residents understand, especially the ones that own and want to preserve the farmland.
Yeah,
for
and
the
it's
future.
it's an opt-in program, right? So you can have the program, maybe no one ever uses it, but you can also have it, and then some communities will use the fees to like go into a open space and farmland preservation account, and then the town like can build upon that money to even go and purchase land for
To keep it
yeah.
preserved.
So it's kind of like a double.
Interesting.
I
Yeah,
was
I'll
thinking-
send more information.
Yeah,
'cause
that would
it's
be
hard-
Thinking in
lovely, yeah.
terms of tree farms, where you can do tree farms and you get lower taxes, I guess, if you keep your farm for so many years or something and have so many trees or something like that.
Yeah, it's different than that program.
But you
But-
still have to pay back taxes if you take a lot out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, so there is an issue there.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I can see though why that would work, because if a town does want to preserve farmland, you have no control over the farmer developing their 100 acres.
Yeah.
Correct.
yeah, 'cause it's
But
their
if a
land.
farmer has the option of not selling off 50 acres to a development when they could do this, that could be, I think of my own father-in-law, that would be an option he would choose versus selling off
Sure.
50 acres
Right,
if he had to,
right.
you know.
And knowing it's to be preserved.
And knowing that it was going to be preserved for farmland,
Mhm.
that's a bonus for the town. They get their preservation of farmland,
And
but
he
then
gets to survive
he
on
could
his
still
own.
afford to live,
Right,
you know.
Honestly.
yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I can see
That's
that.
really cool.
Good.
Mm.
All right.
So many things.
Okay, let's see.
So we're on to natural resources, forestry, and then agriculture.
So this map is looking at important habitats in Lyman for wildlife.
Hmm.
So the state has a lot of different ways that they categorize habitats. So I kind of included all of them on this map. The most important are the purple circles. Those are the endangered, threatened, or species of concern habitats. So you do have,
4.
4 areas.
Oh, 5.
No, sorry, 7. Some of them are overlapping a little
tiny.
bit.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
tiny, but yeah,
Oh, yeah,
7
1, 2,
areas.
Huh.
5, 6. Oh, yeah, I see them now, 7. Yeah.
Kind of rare species do we have here besides people?
I'll show you in a moment. You have a lot of aquatic species habitats, which again makes sense. Some
Yeah.
inland and wading bird habitats, which, tying to, your aging population and,
That's a rare species.
no, that's not.
Here.
What I was gonna say is that bird watching is a very popular
Yeah.
hobby that is, I'm also a bird watcher and I'm not aging. Well, we're all aging, but
Yeah.
I'm not quite in that population yet. However, it's often very popular among older folks and it's, low cost, low barrier to entry. And you have a lot of ponds. So I was just in my head as I was looking at this, I was thinking, if you have inland wading bird habitat, there might be an opportunity to think about recreation for bird watchers
Right.
or
I'm gonna have to
something
find
like
this
that.
butterfly on the next page because I didn't even know we had that here. That's so freaking cool.
Okay.
Yes. So these are the some of the endangered or threatened species,
And we have them.
and they have been documented in Lyman. Yes.
Oh my God. What is that thing?
So we have and for those that don't see it yet, we have a ringed bog hunter, which is kind of like a dragonfly, right? Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And then a Hessel's hair streak, which is that the moth or butterfly
Yeah. Yeah. Moth, I
or
think.
something. And then there's a snake and a bird.
Yes. Of the ribbon snakes, that one is not endangered.
Good.
It's I think a state species of concern, if I'm
Uh-huh.
recalling correctly. And then the bird is the least bittern. And it's
The
a
what?
pretty least bittern. And it's a
Least-
pretty shy wading bird that likes to be in the reeds, kind of like a great blue heron, but it's
Okay.
quite a bit
And it's
smaller.
quite tiny, yep.
Huh.
Very neat.
Yeah.
That would be nice though for again like a story walk or for, people who to encourage people to gently walk through our trails
Wow.
to see once we have trails.
Okay, so an analysis I did was looking at
Total acreage.
acreage in Lyman. So you've got about 26,000 total acres. Currently, 14,500 or so are undeveloped. So that's 56% of your lands right now are undeveloped. Typically, kind of in the, I guess you could say in the academic sphere, when they analyze communities that consider themselves rural, it's usually 70% undeveloped.
Wow.
Wow.
But, you know, that can change based on the size of the community. I think also, you know, Maine is very densely forested. And when you're densely forested and you see fewer of your neighbors, it also contributes to that more rural feel. But just kind of interesting to note that, you know, Lyman's kind of already passed that threshold in some ways, but not in the lived experience, which is just as important. So far, there are just under 2,000 acres that are conserved. And so that's about 8% of your total lands are conserved, and about 14% of your undeveloped lands are conserved. So thinking about, you know, priorities for the town, if it's, you know, your rural feel and access to, you know, farmlands and forests and things like that, that gap between, you know, 56% of your lands are undeveloped, but only 14% of them are conserved. You know, what happens to that other, you know, 42%? If that all develops, you know, Lyman would look and feel a whole lot different than today, right? And so trying to figure out, you know, what are the key places that you want to conserve or that you want to really maintain the rural feel, and how can you, you know.
And I assume you have a map to show us where these pieces are, or yes and no?
Yeah, so I actually just put, this is Lyman.
Okay.
And then
Yeah,
You see,
there's no key, so I wasn't
No,
sure if
there's no
that's really
key,
it.
yeah. I just wanted to put it big enough that you could get a sense. So the
Right.
dark green is conserved, the
Okay.
light green is undeveloped, and then the, on this screen, it looks like a mustard
Yeah.
yellow is developed lands.
and then, okay. I see. But it's pretty hard to conserve land, isn't it?
It's fairly difficult, yes. But things like the density transfer charge, for example, we know that we can't stop growth unless a single person owned every property, right? They could decide that they don't want growth and not do anything with all that property. But when, you know, we live in a great place where everyone can own property, people have rights to do what they want with their property, right? And so you can't stop growth.
Right.
You can direct how growth happens. And so that's why things like a density transfer charge, allowing growth in certain areas and making it easier for development to happen in certain areas, and then conversely making it more difficult or less, you know, attractive to happen in other areas is important, because that is like a natural way to maintain the rural look and feel.
Are there small towns that have been successful in this area? I mean, I'm not talking about cities that have more planning and, you know, resources, et cetera, but are there small towns that have been successful in you know, managing this?
I would say if you look at Berwick, they have their growth really concentrated in their downtown,
Yeah.
and then very little growth on their outskirts, especially in the northern half of the community.
But is that because they are managing it that way, or is it because that's the way it is? The way it's, you know, grown more or less?
Historic patterns helped because their downtown with, you know, Somersworth and there helped.
Down there.
But they do allow, you know, much greater density in the downtown than they do on the outskirts, and they're going to try to and they're also interested in the density transfer charge concept. So
Have they revised their plans recently, Berwick?
yeah, they are like 95% done their comp plan.
Wow.
Is there a way, and this might, I don't know if this is too much work or if this is something that is being done, is there a way to almost drop the roadmaps on top of that?
Yes, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah.
I'll also
I
make,
don't know if anyone would like to see that.
That'd be helpful.
I would like to see where things
Yeah.
land.
No, it sounds kind of good, but it's
And
hard
if you
to,
guys have the technology to do it,
yeah, we couldn't do that.
well, it would take me a week. So. I think it'd be really fascinating for our residents to see the roads and where things are, so they have more of an understanding of even where the
Yeah.
conservation. I didn't realize we had that much even in conservation. To me, I'm like, oh, we do have that much? I didn't think we had barely anything. So that does make me feel good we have something.
Yeah, just, it just sounds like a difficult area to manage.
Yeah.
Because because the land is privately owned.
Well, I think where you're talking,
Oh, interesting.
that potential density transfer charge sounds like something that could really be a really good thing for our
Okay.
town if people knew about it.
yeah, yeah.
For those that are looking and struggling but want to stay where they are but not succumb to the developer that says, have I got a deal for you? Which is unfortunately becoming easier to do for people because of how hard things are.
Mhm.
Okay.
Hmm.
Awesome.
This is a list of
Players.
the major conservation open space players in Lyman. So according to the data set that I have of the different conserved lands, these are the list of those who own those conserved lands. So the Kennebunk Land Trust, the Francis Small Heritage Trust, the USDA, York County Soil and Water Conservation District, Town of Lyman, and Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife. So I thought this was interesting because not every Maine town has
Conservation.
nonprofit, local, state, and federal land. Because, in the East Coast in general, there are less federal parks and
Right.
conservation areas. So I thought that was interesting that
Hmm.
even though Lyman is not a gigantic town, that you do have some federally owned land.
I hate to be a pain in the butt again, but could you put those on the map to show the conservations who belongs to it?
Yeah,
I'm sorry to
No.
ask you to do that. But I
that's,
would love to see that as
I
well.
can absolutely do
And I think
that.
that again would be important for us if there was to be, just to work with the other players. That'd be great.
I had several key takeaways from the section. It's a big section, and there's a lot for this chapter also that'll be kind of explained more in the narrative form once we get there. But some key takeaways: there are definitely more farms now than 20 years ago by 5, but the farms are smaller,
Makes
and
sense.
so there could be some policies that could help there. 44% of your land is low or very low suitable for development. Much of the land covers wetlands, but they are forested wetlands. Your ponds and lakes are a mixture of warm and cold fisheries. You have 7 habitat areas that support endangered, threatened, or species of concern. And 56% of Lyman's land is de facto open space because it's undeveloped, but only 14% of that's conserved.
And how does that, and I don't know if it makes a difference, but I don't say you have to do this, but how does that compare with other towns of a similar size? Or are they all over the map as far as, percent that is conserved?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I just sort of wonder whether we're lagging behind or, I don't think there's been any particular effort to conserve
Sure,
land,
no.
but I just wonder
Well,
how
I
we.
mean, we're now getting into finally land use study and what the town owns for land, so I think that's just coming to the forefront for the town as well.
Yeah, I just wonder how we compare to other,
Yeah,
just because unless somebody has planned this, it would seem like it just sort of happens. It happens, it's not necessarily, it's not planned, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So maybe some towns are way ahead on this, and maybe some towns don't have any conserved land.
like I would say
Very little.
Kennebunk's probably pretty high up there in the conservation department, they're pretty good at,
I don't know, maybe. Kennebunk?
or like Wells, they have the big preserves down there too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know.
anyway, if it's available, I wouldn't spend any money on it. Key question.
Yeah, key questions. So what resources are most important to Lyman? What protections might the town be open to for those important resources? Thinking about how do your natural resources influence your quality of life here? As I said before, what happens to the look and feel of Lyman if as land becomes developed, and how does, how that development happens change the
Dynamics of Lyman.
yeah, and if it's, there are different ways to grow, right? So what way to grow is the way that will help Lyman's quality of life be most preserved and maintained? And which undeveloped areas would be most important to become conserved open space? So for example, maybe areas that house endangered species, or maybe areas that have particular scenic value.
Well, we've been even looking at like the aquifers in Lyman, because we have no water source that's protected,
Public water.
so that we have no public water department. So down the road, would there ever be public water? So you'd want to conserve land around the best aquifer. And we've been in touch a little bit with the CDC, because it's under the CDC is the drinking water program. So we've spoken to someone there, and we basically would just need a soil scientist, water engineer person to come out and say, hey, this is probably your best spot for a water system and a public works, water department. And then be able to protect the land around it for what development would be allowed. We do understand we'd have to have, like, I think they said, like a water engineer that runs it. And, and what was funny, they said, she goes, I'm kind of rusty. She goes, most towns already have a public water source established. And I was like, really? So apparently we're like behind the times on that. So that is something our committee has looked at as well, realizing that for future generations, way down the road, because we're not looking to become Saco overnight, or Portland, but down the road, someday you might need public water department. And apparently we're very rich, like aquifer wise in this town. In a good way, because we're very gravelly. It's very good.
Yeah, it's good for recharge.
Yes. Yeah. So we did find that out with a little digging as we've been traipsing along.
Okay, parks, recreation, and open space. So these are the names of, these two chapters kind of, mesh together a bit. These are the names of the different conserved areas and parks and fields that I could find. If there are others, please let me know.
So the Bungana Lake camping area is actually privately owned.
Okay.
I don't know if that matters. That's not part of, like, we have no camping area. So that's it, something for a little further up that is owned privately and they rent it out. They have their own business there. But we do have Bunganut Park and Field, yes. I've never even heard of Gracie Evans Field.
No, I don't.
We do have Kennebunk Pond Beach, Massapequa Sid Experimental Forest, yep. Sid Emery, I think is Sid Emery really Waterboro, but it abuts us, or is it?
I don't know.
That might be kind of like
I think it just goes over the line.
it just
Maybe a
grazes
little
into
bit.
ours a wee bit, yeah. I've never heard of Bradford Memorial Tract, ever. Anybody?
Public access, I looked into this, it's not allowed, however, it is conserved land.
Okay, see, little to know. And Black Kettle Farm, that's the one that is the farm that's coming under a new name, I think, this coming year. So that's over off of South Waterville Road. I didn't know about that.
Interesting.
Okay, let's see
I'll
here.
go with Parks and Rec here.
So I just put in a little thing about Bunganut, but I know you all probably know about it already, so
We
we
don't
don't need
have
to talk
horseshoe
about it.
pits anymore, if that matters.
No horseshoe pits, okay.
And there could be some things changing, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah.
And does the YMCA from Sanford still help out? No?
We don't know.
Okay. It's
And
listed
that-
on their website and on your website,
They're
so,
under negotiations right now.
okay.
So
Oh,
nothing's
okay.
come to
That's a
fruition.
contract.
Right now, there is
Oh.
no contract with them. It
Okay.
can't, it lapsed, it was done in October, so they've been negotiating with the town.
Oh, okay.
I don't think a decision has been made one way or the
Okay,
other.
gotcha, gotcha.
Okay.
at this point.
So we might just have to wait on that to see.
Correct.
And then I did do a little page on each of these
Mhm.
in the packet, but not going to talk about them tonight. But the Massabesic Little League, the United Soccer Club, whoops, there's a letter missing there, and just the school athletics program, which compared to my high school, far more sports offered. I was
Oh,
Really
RC
impressed.
57,
Yeah. far more sports offered.
Yeah, well, and as of note, their Massabesic women's wrestling team won state champs.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, so that was congratulations to them. Good job, well done. They have some, like, I think even the golf team did something amazing too. I forget right now, but yeah, they have some pretty cool stuff.
That's awesome. And then I wanted to put up the community library in terms of recreation. Obviously, it's not outdoor recreation, but they have the crafting, the story times, an adult book club,
Gee, I
a
don't see
cribbage
the
club.
puzzle club
I
listed.
know,
What
they're
a
starting it
shock.
up. I'm telling you, they're just starting it, Dawn.
Okay.
You wait.
I'll add it.
Puzzle club.
It was so much
I've got a lot
fun.
of puzzles, but.
It was so much fun.
Okay, so this section was pretty short,
Yeah.
but I would say my key takeaways were a lot of your recreation opportunities are for youth and they're shared among neighboring communities. Seems like Bucknut Park is a critical resource for recreation. And just thinking about, what recreation opportunities are desired but not offered. I didn't find anything about dance or about like adult sports leagues or things
No
of that
pickleball.
nature.
We don't have pickleball, we
Yeah.
don't have tennis,
What a
we don't
shock.
have basketball, we don't have nothing.
But also the town really doesn't sponsor any of this, right?
No, I mean, I think the unfortunate part right now is we have some great programs for the kids that are offered, and in Parks and Rec is doing a fabulous job, and they have some super cool stuff coming up this year. We don't have programs for beyond what the library offers, which again is not owned by the town, that's where it's difficult. The town doesn't offer programs for our adults or elderlies,
But Parks and Rec has been offering programs, right?
for kids, yeah.
But also, I thought they were doing concerts and things like
They
that.
do concerts in the park on
Concerts,
Thursdays.
okay.
Yeah, they do concerts in the park on Thursdays. They did try last year. I don't know if they tried this year. They tried to do snowshoeing. I have not seen that again.
Oh,
Because we have snow yay this year. Last year we didn't have much.
right.
I don't know if they tried snowshoeing or cross-country skiing again. They were trying to do that out of Bucknut. I don't know if that took off this year. My apologies if it did and I missed it, guys. And we do have an outdoor skating rink they put up every year.
Oh, okay.
And they have skates that you can use there. They have a little shack. They keep track of it. And so they do that. And they're doing great jobs fundraising to bring in new equipment for the playground. They just got is it the Noah's Ark ship
Oh, really?
play that they just had installed.
You're talking about the library now?
Yeah. Well, no, Parks and Rec
Oh, Parks
just
and Rec.
had just did fundraising for a really great ship over there, and that was put in, and a couple of little things for the kids over there. It's looking really great. So that's come a long way as well, because we really haven't had a good playground for the kids in a very long time. So that's really fantastic. But as far as programs for adults that the town offers separate from the library, there are none. Again, we have no space to
Right.
Well,
offer something like
I mean,
that.
Harris Farmers, we were over there to get milk today, and their cross country's going crazy right now.
But they're Dayton.
I know, but I mean, no, but it's
Yeah.
not part of Dayton.
Correct.
You pay,
Yeah, and you pay to go in, so.
which is
Yep.
legitimate.
Yeah, of course, they have to maintain that.
Anyway,
So I think that is important, because I think there is a lot in need for adults to have
Yeah.
something to do in town, or like you see the picnics that Waterboro does for their, I don't want to say elderly, they're more mature generation.
I'm elderly, but I'm not old.
I said mature.
Sure.
You're still 29 at heart, Dawn.
No, a little past that. I've been 29 several times, not 4.
Okay, and the last section tonight is land use.
Yeah.
So, okay, here
Should be
I
interesting.
put up the zones and then I basically did a generalized zoning category of all your neighbors to see how their zones kind of interact with your zones. Because I know there's interest in talk and updating your zoning. So
Yes.
it's good to coordinate that across boundaries. If there's a center in Dayton right over the border, it'd probably be important to consider, what land use you want to have
Oh,
on
that's
your side of the
interesting,
border. But you have, your 4 zones, 3 really, but then the mobile home overlay.
Yeah. 2 of those.
And yeah, mostly in the 3 corners, the north, south, and east corners of your rhombus. Also, I love that Lyman's shape is a rhombus. It's so fun. Not a lot of towns have a rhombus.
That's a good term. I haven't heard that term in years.
I was a math geek as a kid.
Oh, gosh, I'm sorry for you.
I know. Yeah, so your general purpose zone, obviously your
Yeah.
largest
Huh,
zone,
that's
almost 20,000 acres.
Mm.
Residential is 4,400, your commercial 1,300, and the mobile home overlay 500.
Wow, that's low for commercial.
Compared to other towns, is my opinion, but I don't know that it's based on really any total facts, but do we have a smaller number of zones?
Yes.
Is it possible, not to be a dork, or if I don't know if this would be too much work, but would it be potential possible to see like the zones and the percentages, maybe at the towns that do abut us? Is that, I don't know if you might not
yeah.
have that, because you might not have it all
I'd
done.
be too busy, although I don't know.
Because it'd
I
be
think
Arundel, Waterboro, and Dayton, and what's the other one that abuts us? I
Or
can't see.
Kennybunk.
Alfred, Kennybunk, Hollis.
Kennebunk's a little bit of an
you-
outlier.
Hollis, will be about Hollis too, yeah.
No.
I mean, if it's too much
Not
work,
much.
that's fine, but I'd just be curious to see what zones they have and what their percentages are as well, where we're kind of in the same pocket as them.
Yeah.
And it is interesting, because I do think Waterboro has grown. I mean, I grew up way out in Lake Arrowhead many moons ago, so that area has definitely changed. But even though Waterboro has development, it still has kept its character. Hollis as well, Dayton, Arundel. I mean, they all have really kept kind of their charm, shall I say, is the word, I
charm?
guess.
Didn't Southern Maine just recently do Arundel?
Yeah,
Comp plan, no.
their comp plan's
I don't think
pretty
so.
comprehensive.
No, I think
Others
you
is
redid
pretty
their
good.
zoning or something.
Oh.
I think you did.
Someone
I'm
may
not trying to put you
have.
on the spot, I'm just asking.
Yeah.
That's why you might have the data. If you don't, and it's too much work,
No,
that's
I'm
fine.
just sort of, it's because I get the impression that,
I think what if they have 14 zones with that or something?
yeah, that we have, since we only have really 3 zones, when you get down to it, that we have, I guess I'm trying to say is, if I'm trying to figure out what the.
We wanna know what the zones are in the
benefit is
towns,
of
yeah.
having multiple zones. I mean, because multiple zones allow you to do different things in different areas. And I have difficulty trying to analyze how that works
Mm.
for.
Well, that's why I think seeing someone else's would be interesting.
Yeah, and it probably would be to see whether it makes that much difference or not, or.
And looking at the acreage size and what they're.
Yeah,
attributing to
and that's
as
really
well.
the main question here would be, I would think, would be the acreage size for homes in particular in each area. Because that's what it would either drive development or possibly restrict development.
Like
I
they're,
mean, we have gone with ADUs, we could expand to that use, which is probably helpful.
so he's looking for, like, we're looking for maybe in these towns that surround us, their standard lot size. And then
Get
their,
comparison.
comparison, their standard lot size, or do they vary like we do, where we have the 2 different lot sizes? And then like their zones and maybe what they have for acreage in those zones compared to us as well,
Yeah.
because that's, just to have the side by side, to
Get
know
a
what
feeling for,
this little area is doing, If that's too much, my apologies.
And I think too, it's hard to compare sometimes because you have to go all the way back right to what we even have for land available and type of land,
yeah.
to even know how much percentage you could even allot for that kind of zone.
Right,
So it
But
could vary
this is
greatly
just gonna-
between town to town based
right,
on some
but
of
just
that.
ballpark numbers,
Yeah.
like if they're like, we know it's gonna be different, some of them you might not have, but some of them you might have in your database, and if they're easy to pull to kind of go alongside.
Yeah. Well, I wonder too if it might be interesting to look at Berwick, for example, just because they do a good job of
Yeah,
not sprawling their development.
Right, which is, I think would be.
and they have
good.
multiple zones.
Right.
Yeah.
And that
but
would be
not too
beneficial
many. I
for
think
us.
they have 4 or 5. I would say if you did one thing, I would get rid of a general purpose zone. I think they're generally not helpful because they're so broad that I don't think that they help a town
Right.
fulfill its vision in the way
Yeah.
that they want to,
Right.
because the zone is
It's too
just
loose.
so broad.
Well,
Like, what is it trying to accomplish?
It would have to be replaced by something that maybe is a little more specific, because
Or a
general
few
purpose right
things,
now
yeah.
allows a lot of activities that are
Right.
not permitted in
Residential.
residential zones. So you've got to, I mean, and that's a big deal for somebody who has a farm or something that's a commercial entity,
Right.
and where it might not be allowed in a residential area.
Yeah.
I mean, really, our residential area is pretty small.
Yeah.
So,
I'm in the residential.
very small,
Yeah, just
actually.
like, yes, or whatever town you think would be a good comparison for us to see what they have for zones and what their acreage is, and like what their lot
Just make
size,
something that makes-
acreage wise is. Because that is our biggest thing we
This is-
hear from people, want to lower it, don't want to lower it. You get people very passionate about both sides of it, but I do think it'd be.
That's
nice
gonna
to-
bring them out.
Yeah, I think
bring
it just would be nice
residents
to have a comparison.
Yeah.
We understand we don't have to be like another town, but to know what the towns around us are, I don't even know what they are, to be quite frank. I mean, I just know, like, I think, like, Arrowhead's 0.25 acres, a lot or something.
Quarter acre.
Oh, yeah, I think it's a quarter acre.
Well,
lot.
they must have public sewer.
They do, well, they have their own, yeah, they have their own public works, public sewer, water, everything.
Yeah.
But that was sort of many moons ago. Remember that?
Yeah.
So,
One thing, like hopefully you'll be able to get the funds to continue work on the comprehensive plan with us. But when we do that and we get to the future land use part, I don't even start with thinking about zones.
right,
We're gonna
Wow.
take out a big map and we're gonna draw blobs around areas that have a similar character.
Yeah.
When you're in that area, it has a certain look and feel
Mhm.
because of whatever similarities that it has that are different than else, and we're gonna draw.
Mhm.
And then we're gonna step back and say, okay, why does it have that character? Like, what makes it its own unique place in this area?
Yeah.
And then we think about, okay, what do we want in different places? What kind of development do we want to see? Do we want to see, nature-based recreation businesses
Okay.
and conservation and farmlands and forestry,
Mm.
whatever, in one area? Do we want to see,
Restaurants. little
restaurants?
Niche restaurants or
Yeah.
coffee shops in another area.
Do we want an area where,
Farmers
we're
market.
okay with more subdivisions and, and another area where we want, there's just,
Elderly housing.
who knows?
Like we
could
always
be
talk about
many
elderly housing
things.
near 111 or 35 because it's their main route. You wouldn't want to stick them in the puckas on the outskirts of Lyman where they can't get to anything.
Yeah,
Or near the fire station, that type of thing.
yeah. But it's good I think people can get really locked in on the zones that exist.
Yeah.
But really, I think it's helpful to think what makes this area similar to what makes this and this and this and this feel like an area, and what makes that area feel different than this area
Right.
over here, and then going from there.
And maybe you would know this, Dawn, because this would be something that my brain has no idea about. It's like, what's really funny is until I started kind of watching things in town, I never knew I lived in the residential zone. I
Oh.
honest to God didn't. I thought I was in general purpose. I was like, oh my God, when did that happen? So so I don't even know what year residential zone got started in this town or how it was decided. And I don't even
Since
know,
I've been here.
Really?
Over 20 years.
yeah, somehow I didn't know that.
Well, I
I
think-
missed the
Well,
memo.
I think Peggy too has mentioned that not all zones are abutted by say roads.
Right.
Some people's property, you can't really tell
You can't
Like-
tell.
if it's residential or general purpose, or maybe it falls in
Yeah.
both.
Huff
because-
Road, Huff Road.
Yeah,
it's
some,
not
well,
like-
both.
Right, so that's definitely something that is wrong with our zoning map, that we don't have clear guidelines or landmarks between our zoning areas.
Or some are if they were done by, you're near a road, so they're right on, if you went by the crow flies from a commercial zone, the land lands in it, but then it's marked residential, so it's just bizarre.
Remember commercial, that was commercial slant residential.
Correct.
Because that was changed a while ago.
And that's just it. See, I don't know this. I don't have any history on
Well, I
this.
mean, I think this is where people are really gonna get interested, because the zoning determines what you can do with your property.
Right.
And and you're right, maybe a lot of people, including when we bought our place, it's in residential, but maybe the realtor said something about that, I don't remember. But you don't care about it until you decide, well, I want to do something with my property.
And you
You
can't.
find out that the zoning does not allow that.
Mhm.
Or your neighbor does something crazy, you say, how can they do that? And you find out
And they're
the
2 feet
zoning
over the
does
line.
allow it.
They're 2 feet over the line and they can do it, so it's just
So-
bizarre, you know, yeah.
So it's interesting, that'll be where you'll get, I think we'll get more public interest, because that will
Yeah,
affect more people personally.
Right, because then I look and say like, well, 111,
hmm,
you know, I look at the strip of that's called Commercial Residential District, right, on
Yeah.
111.
Yeah.
Well, there's got to be people who half their properties in commercial residential and half is in,
mhm,
you know, general purpose.
right,
Well,
It's almost the same thing though.
yeah.
Yeah.
Between, you know, because you can have a business and general purpose, but that's probably one of the first areas I think we should look at to expand.
Yeah, and I don't
You know,
see, and
You
for,
could expand Route 111
right,
all the way up for commercial and residential district, and it really wouldn't change many things for the people that are in general purpose.
One of the things that I have come to find in the research that I've done is, and maybe this isn't unusual, but the town of Lyman has a lot of non-conforming lots.
Mhm.
yes.
Lots of record or whatever. Yes,
Hmm.
a lot of them were because they were prior to zoning, but also because, you know, there's a lot of areas in town where, you know, Coxall's one of them. That's a residential area, but there isn't a 3-acre lot to be had down there. Poor Farm Road, there's so many that's full of non-conforming lots.
Mm.
Old North Berwick Road, lots of non-conforming lots out there. So I think that, to Michaela's point of getting rid of the general purpose zone is helpful. It could prove helpful, just because all of a sudden we would have more lots that really are conforming, and more, it would just be not, the town wouldn't be so chopped up, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Let me ask one other, just thinking about it. Do other towns have contract zoning much?
Some do, not a ton.
Yeah, because we had it and it got voted out.
Yeah,
And there's two sides of that. I mean, I can see both sides of that discussion.
same.
But I just wondered if a lot of towns had contracts.
Yeah.
So,
No, Waterboro has a couple. I think Kennebunkport has a couple. I don't think, I'm trying to think of the towns I originally work with. I don't think Baldwin has any. I don't think Berwick has any.
yeah,
It
I
really
think we have
depends.
4. I think we have 4. No, we have 3.
Hmm.
I just wondered whether, well, we don't have it. It's not allowed now, but the ones that are there are there. So it's a different thing.
Hmm.
So this map uses, it's called E911
Mhm.
address data.
Oh, yeah.
It's a statewide data source. And
That's pretty crazy.
I just put all the addresses on the map to see, you know, where
Wow.
does existing development occur, and it follows the road network. So when you made that
Yeah.
point earlier, I was like,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
absolutely.
think it would make sense to see that.
Yeah,
Well, it shows all the open area, doesn't it?
yeah. So
That-
yeah,
that's-
most of the,
So we almost do have like clusters.
Well, remember, this is the scale here is,
Right.
so,
on the top of our rhombus is mostly conserved property.
Yeah, which is again where
Near
it's
the
interesting.
Hollis,
It'll be interesting
Waterboro,
to
Dayton
see
area.
the roads are over
well,
that. It'd be
development
interesting,
occurs
yeah.
along the road. You gotta have a road.
Yeah, yeah.
Some sort of a road.
and there are
Interesting.
2,300 addresses, so all land use types.
Mhm.
That's how many addresses are documented,
2,000.
and about 2,187 housing units.
That's interesting too. That's not a big gap between,
Yeah. not a
Why
big
would
gap.
it be? I guess that would, business, I mean, why would you have more addresses than housing units? Because there's
Well,
addresses
if your
don't
land
have.
crosses a road, it's 2 lots. So you have an address for that second lot.
Oh, the town hall has an address, but it's not a housing unit.
Oh, I see,
Right.
I see, I got you.
Yeah.
that's
Like
interesting.
we have 2 addresses for our, because they're they're considered 2 lots.
Yeah.
Does your mail go to 2 places?
No, you just don't have a mailbox at one address.
I thought I had shown some of the different conservation ownership, but it wasn't until this map. So I didn't have
Right.
the specific owner, but I have
Oh, sorry. Interesting.
tree growth, federally owned, nonprofit easement, and Maine conserved lands.
Okay.
So there are, if you consider tree growth as conserved land, which, it's kind of short-term conserved,
All right.
God, that's-
that does add quite a bit of land. But this map is just showing development limitations. So the high-risk flood zones, steep
Mhm.
slopes, your water bodies, and your conserved lands.
Wow.
But a lot of the limitations are in areas, where you don't have as much housing and there aren't as many limitations in, your eastern part of town, which kind of makes sense where you already have a lot of development.
Yep.
There are fewer development limitations.
Mhm.
Wow, that's interesting, that is sort of interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Geez, there's too much here.
Makes your head spin a little bit.
Too
I
much
think
stuff
on the
here.
addresses, if you pay taxes on it, it's considered an address.
Yep.
That's
So whether there's a building there or not, if
a
you,
good point.
yeah,
That's
it's
a
an
good point.
address.
Okay, so when are we gonna get all these answers here? You got a lot of
So
questions.
her list, her key takeaways.
So Lyman's predominantly residential. Your development is concentrated around your ponds and lakes, your major roads, in your commercial residential zones, and in the Goodwin Mills area. You have some physical constraints like
Right.
wetlands and steep slopes that would limit future development locations. Then my key questions are what distribution of land uses will best serve the town over the next 20 years? Financially, recreationally, environmentally, in terms of quality of life. So when you're starting the future land use conversation, there is a tendency for people to focus in on, what they want for their one property,
Right, which
their
doesn't-
one parcel of land. And this is where we have to think really big picture, especially for the future land use discussion,
Right.
because the future land use map is not a zoning map, right? It's more conceptual than that. And then you'll
Right.
use that to build your zoning map later.
Right.
And that's the map that will,
That's where
Correct.
ORC takes from that and makes the ordinances
That's where people
match
get
the
really-
zoning
Right.
map, zoning map.
right.
Correct.
So just trying to stay high level, I think when you first approach the land use
Right.
conversation will be key. And then you can get more and more specific as you go, but starting high level will be really important. If you start too specific, what I've seen happen is,
Yeah.
I want that and you don't want that, and then the conversation just
And
doesn't
simpler
progress.
goals. Yeah. And I mean, that's something I think in the estimate we have with SMPDC that hopefully will get voted in at town meeting. I think that does allow for some meetings with you guys, with the public, and those are the ones where specifically I would want you, SMPDC, leading those meetings when it comes to acreage and zoning. To be able to
Yeah.
answer those questions that we're gonna get hit with, because I'd want, we're here to talk as well, and we've collected data and surveys and stuff like that, but when people come up with questions that we might not have the answers to, you guys are the ones doing it.
Give a
This is
better
what you do.
perspective.
You have a different perspective, you'll be able to say, I wouldn't want to misspeak to say how conceptual this is, you know what I'm saying? So where you're understanding that a little better, I think those are the meetings that would be important to have the public hearings where you guys are leading those ones. We're good with the roundtables and showing what we've gotten
Yeah.
for data and being able to come and talk about this and
Well, and also it helps to have someone who has a larger perspective, having dealt
understanding.
with other towns
Yep.
and also the whole of, say, York County.
Yep.
Rather than just, one town. So you get a better perspective.
It's also nice well, like we can be the bad guys too.
Well, and
You know,
that's-
and you resident volunteers don't have to be the ones under fire.
Right, and well, like we've said, it's unfortunate that it becomes personal for some people, and then they think someone has an agenda when they really don't. You're just here volunteering your time. We don't get anything out of this. We're volunteering our time, and we just really care about our
I get the
community.
companionship of, never mind.
Dawn's cookies.
Yeah,
So-
they're all gone right now, but somebody ate
Get
them.
bacon, buddy.
Yeah, I
So,
hate 'em.
you know, you guys are fantastic at what you do. And you have the knowledge and the expertise and the experience to help lead a town. And that's why your knowledge is invaluable for our town, because there are a lot of strong opinions on this. And we're just here to help
I just
gather
had
and keep,
a general
cheerleading it.
question here on the comprehensive, I can't remember. I'm just thinking about the one in 2019. Does that have to go to the voters, the comprehensive plan?
yeah.
It must have gone to the voters then.
Yeah.
Have you ever had one, or not you, but I mean, have you ever worked on one that went to the voters and got rejected?
I have not heard of one getting rejected, no.
Yeah.
Ordinances, yes, all
Oh,
the
yeah,
time.
ordinance are a different
but-
story. They're very specific.
Those are very,
Right.
very
Right, I feel like the comprehensive plan is just like the
Plan is a
ideas,
plan.
a plan.
It's the roadmap.
But,
Yeah.
I mean, the rubber meets the road with the ordinance. That's what people really
Right.
get interested in.
But that's where we've also are trying to gear money towards that as well for the
Yeah.
next step after this.
So it'd be, obviously be a follow-on step.
Yeah. Which I think is the best,
Yeah,
again, way
can-
to have the expertise guidance where people can understand it's not.
Because I
Keep
thought at
driving
first
it.
we didn't have to go to a vote.
Well,
I thought that was initially what we
No.
talked
Oh,
about.
yeah.
but Now I've
No,
been
we do
hearing
have
more
to
that we
do
do.
that.
I guess I'd have to look at the charter again, but, no, I mean, I think it should be voted on by the voters. But I just wondered whether there had been one that you go through all this effort and then it's rejected, and what the heck do you do then? You know, then you got a
Or is
problem.
it that the select board accepts it? I don't know.
I
I gotta
don't know.
look
I
into that
gotta
too.
look-
We gotta look into
I
that.
got my
We'll figure that
charter,
out.
but
I'll make a note.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know your government structure
I think,
totally.
trying to think of 2019, I think it was voters, but I can't remember. I guess I could look at the town report, you could probably tell me. Anyway,
All right,
well, you guys do a
I
great
did
job.
not
I mean,
ask.
except your, how do I put this nicely? Your speed is not rapid, it's slow,
You're busy and lack of.
and that's probably
people.
resource limited,
Yeah, unfortunately.
and that's not gonna
everyone-
change
Like
it.
everyone else.
Well, we did hire, I think since the first time I talked to you guys, we've hired 2 more
Oh,
land use planners, because there was several months where I was it for
Oh,
everyone.
God.
I was the only land use planner. But now we have Jamel, who is the land use division director, and then Malia, who is another land use planner.
And Janelle is
So,
on working hopefully with us, I think, into the future, correct? With the
Yeah.
next Steps.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and he's been talking with Lindsay.
You want somebody that's fast, accurate, and cheap.
He doesn't want much. He doesn't want much at all. Easy peasy.
But I think it will start to speed up, and I think to once if it passes the town meeting, because it's on our list, right? Like
Will be like a
Lyman comp plan starting like gung ho and
Yeah.
hopefully in June, right?
And we have some of it already done. It's not like you're starting from bang the beginning. It's
Right.
Some of it is already done and
That-
collected.
yeah.
And we've
You
had
gotta
a few
speed it up a little.
surveys already come out to guide you what our town is asking for. And again, it's unfortunate that I'll talk to Lindsay about maybe getting a survey that tracks IPs and weeds out the doubles, because so we can get more accuracy and really push for that. But I don't know, fiscally, we have to be responsible too, so that's the other things we have to watch out for, but
Yeah.
we'll do the best we can.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's all we can. That's all any of us can do.
But you've been very interesting tonight. I mean, you're always interesting,
Well, she has
but,
2 more little things to talk
oh,
to
I'm
us
sorry,
about.
I might
She has
go
2
and-
more, next steps. We want the next steps. We have 2 more.
Just that I'll send you the data files, the presentation, the Excel spreadsheets, and an annotated version of this. I'll make some of these changes that you asked for now. Some will come
Later.
later, but I'll do some now. So give me
Yeah, some I
Probably like
assume won't
a
come till
week or two.
possibly Jamel's working with us, some of the bigger stuff I asked for.
yeah.
I understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I'll change what I can, update what I can. I can say comfortably 2 weeks. I can do that. And then I know that Malia has started working on the 3 inventory chapters.
Mhm.
on the writing piece.
Oh,
So
great.
we have that work started. So yeah, just kind of recommend delving into some of the questions that I have in the packet about the data and thinking about the future that Lyman wants. And I don't know how many of your questions on your survey, I'll take a look at the surveys, have asked about like looking ahead.
Yeah,
A lot of
the
them?
second one,
Okay. Okay.
like in the next 5 years, what do you perceive as? We have a lot of those questions.
Okay, nice.
And so you will see that. And then there's also, that's where some of it was a little difficult to track between, the raw data and the spiffied up one. Like the comments portion it's hard to see on the Excel sheet, like the people we left other comments after every question, and we got a lot of responses. So it was good to see that as well. The other one, we didn't do that, and we did get people that were a little not happy about that. So we're making sure to do that, making sure to let them know that, sign up for the town emails, know that this is, we're trying to communicate the best we can. We're gonna constantly do roundtables. We did 2 this past month, 1 got canceled due to a storm. Next month, we will do another roundtable on maybe a weeknight and a weekend, just for people to come, ask questions, tell us how they feel, look at the results we have so far, and that way we can bring it back to you with what we're hearing from people.
Yeah, that's great.
And that way we're just being as open and transparent as we can until it goes to the vote with if someone says, I had no clue this was going on, we're gonna be at the transfer station this summer handing out stuff. We're gonna be in everybody's face. They're gonna hate us when they stop telling us about it. That's what I want. I want to hear, oh my God, I've heard enough, stop.
Yeah.
I'm aware. And that's what I want to hear. My goal is that one of these surveys, we get 1,000 people to respond. That's my dream. And I'm going to hang on to
Good
it,
luck.
Dawn. I'm going to remain positively optimistic.
I did have one other question.
Mhm.
Is you see the state helping us anymore by changing the rules in
gosh.
midstream?
Oh, yeah.
We want to, yeah.
Yes.
Is there, do you know what's coming down the pipe there?
Sort of, yes. So there are, neither bill has been posted, but there are 2 competing
Oh
bills
dear.
updating the growth management law.
Yeah.
One bill is the same bill sponsor as last year,
Okay.
and I have not seen the text on that bill, but I assume it's very similar to what was put
Hopefully
forward
parse down
last
a
year.
little bit.
And then the other bill was drafted by planners in the state and has the support of the Maine Association of Planners. And that is being sponsored by Tiffany Roberts of South Berwick. And so that bill does change some things, but I think the goal is to make it less burdensome. Yeah, and to acknowledge differences in what towns need out of a comprehensive plan. So yeah, I think there will be some changes. I don't think they go into effect until,
After ours is done.
yeah.
Well,
But we'll
remember,
see.
But we should be pretty safe though, as far as it should, well, depending which one gets voted in, we wouldn't have to drastically change what we're doing.
It kind of remains to be seen.
Yeah.
Um,
That's the hard part.
yeah, I will say, if data is good data, so even
Yeah.
the bill from last year would enable a town to not consider pretty much any data except for environmental data. Like transportation was not a required
Oh.
thing. I don't think economic development was a required
No.
section, but it doesn't mean you can't have it in there, right? And so having all this data can't hurt. And then in terms of like structuring, the implementation chapter, the policy chapter, that comes at the
Yeah.
end of the process. So hopefully by then we can structure it to accommodate whatever new legislation is up.
Potentially comes through if it passes.
Yeah.
but is the general trend still trying to force denser housing, or require, I should say, or force? That's the impression I got.
One of the bills wants to have every town designate place types and specific place types, like,
Place types?
yeah, like, this is an urban core and this is
Oh.
a, rural town center and this is a like urban arterial commercial zone and like have specifically defined place types that every town has to kind of pick and choose from to put on their future land use map. That's one of the bills.
Interesting.
And then another bill doesn't include that as a requirement.
There you go, huh?
But there's still no coordination of with the counties or anything, or for major roads and, I mean, if.
There's no directives being given that like, here's a cookie cutter, here's a map to kind
Yeah,
of cut,
I mean-
copy and paste into your plan. or anything.
No, not that I'm aware of.
And fiscally, no help, I assume, for the towns.
Fiscal.
Not in what I've seen.
Okay,
Yeah.
That sounds.
we got our answers, that's not changed.
In other words, same old story.
Yeah, there are a lot of bills about housing besides the growth management though. Lots of bills about housing, changing subdivision law, changing.
Oh, dear.
That could be interesting.
to
Yeah,
look into
so
what's
there's a
going
lot
on.
of different things. I'm not sure all of them are posted yet, but I've heard tell of legislation that we'll be seeing.
Yeah.
Something.
No, it's just that it seems like you go through all this effort and then somehow there's a mandate that makes you have to change it, and there's no resources to assist you, and there's no coordination among towns or counties or anything. So it's a mess.
I know.
I know. What's that story? I'm from the government. I'm here to help you. Maybe. As long as it's convenient. No,
Awesome.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
no,
not
we're
sorry.
getting punchy now.
Yeah, I know.
No, this was a
That's very
fabulous
good.
presentation. Dave or Peg, any questions before?
No, it was very good. Thank you, Michaela.
Absolutely. Y'all are fun to work with, so I
Aw,
appreciate you.
thanks.
I want
Peg,
Peggy's
anything
stuff.
from you, Peg? Are you still alive on there?
I hope we have to call somebody for her.
Peg? Jeffrey's home with her. I'll make sure she's good. I assume Peg's
Sorry,
fine.
what was that?
Any questions from you? You okay? You alive in the box?
I'm alive, I had to go get water. Feeling a little dry right now.
Any more questions or
So am I,
concerns or
Peggy.
thoughts?
I'm a little
No,
dry
I'm
too.
good, thank you.
All right, awesome. No, thank you again so much.
Yeah,
I have emailed Lindsay already to ask the town manager, to ask her to send the survey raw and finalized to you. So you can have that for your packet of Lyman stuff.
Awesome.
And I think that's all I needed to get to you. I took notes from us to go over as a committee. And also, I asked her, and I will see if I can get the cemetery list editable sent as well. I'll make sure I ask the town manager to do that as well.
so when's our next meetings?
Our next meeting was gonna be the 27th. We're gonna have to cancel that because they're doing a workshop here.
Okay.
And we moved to the library, and I truly believe that all our meetings really need to be on YouTube going forward, no matter what. I don't wanna
I think they
say, hey, we had one at the library, but didn't have
should. No,
the
that's not
camera.
good.
That doesn't go well with
Said
me.
well.
I do, Michaela, we're just planning our next meeting, but thank you
Yeah,
Thank
so,
you.
so much
Good
for
to see you
everything.
all.
That was really the best.
Have a safe trip back, please.
Oh, thank you. Well, you too.
All right, so let me pull up my calendar.
was good.
So the 27th we can't do because of,
Whatever.
whatever's. I'm just looking at what I have going on. Does the 6th work for anybody?
I'm available. I'm always available.
Yeah, that's fine for me.
I'll see if the 6th is available. I'll email Lindsay and the town manager and just ask her if the 6th is available for a room. I don't see anyone else that would have it.
Yeah.
So I'm sending her an email right now.
Do we have another Saturday meeting planned?
No, we don't.
Okay, I'm not pushing, I'm just.
Or are we gonna do another evening?
Do we want to try to grab those dates now for next month so I'm gonna do,
Yes.
March 6th, next CPC. And then for roundtables, do we want to talk about those now?
Yes. But just for planning purposes.
Yeah, because I would like to, for me, like, I want to go through this presentation. She said it's gonna take 2 weeks to get the final one to us. So I'm keeping that in mind. So do we want to try for I can't do the 20th, but if you guys want to try the 20th, or do you want to try like, the week of the 17th, shall we say? Is there a certain, you want to try
Does someone have Tuesday nights? Is there someone that has Tuesday nights?
I don't know. I don't have my schedule. Is it a town, on the town thing?
Oh, I don't think so. Maybe I'm thinking myself here. The 18th, 19th, or 20th?
I'm available. I'm always available.
Do you want me to see if the room is, the 18th and 19th, I am available.
Yeah, see if it's available one of those nights.
I'm available the 17th, but I
The
think that might
planning board
be.
is the first and third, so the planning board would have the 19th, I would think.
How about this, do we know if the select board's the 17th? I can never remember what they are. Are they?
Well, it happens to be, it's not a national holiday, but it's St. Patrick's
Patrick's
Day.
Day.
It's almost the same thing.
It kind of is a national holiday, totally done.
Wow.
No, aren't they the second and third? Dave, do you guys have your meeting on the 17th?
Very good question.
Well, that's a not holiday.
Let me
really.
see if there's anything on the town
Irish
calendar that far out.
I mean, Patty's Day isn't, yeah, we do.
You do, it is that day.
We
Okay.
We have it on the 17th.
So do you want me to see the 18th? Because you guys can have it without me. Peg, you should be feeling well enough to lead a charge on the 20th.
Yeah, just go for
Okay,
the 18th.
So I'll go the 18th, 20th if all else fails. And do you want to say that Saturday, the 22nd?
I don't care.
Yeah.
Does that work for everybody?
Yeah.
So I'll say the 18th and 22nd. Does that work for everyone?
Yeah.
Sure.
March. I'm gonna CC you guys all on this. And
Well, after you check.
18th at 6 and 10 o'clock again on Saturday at 10.
You're gonna let us know, but after you check.
I'm asking her right now. I'm gonna CC
Okay.
Peg on this. Peg, you can let ORC know.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds like a plan. I just want to try to keep up with it. I have such a busy schedule, you know, so
All right, I just sent it to her just now, so that's done.
I'm in great
All right,
demand.
so I think that was great, guys. I think my head's spinning with all that. That
No,
was a
she was
lot.
good.
She was,
That was a
that
lot.
was really good. But I think having her full presentation back with the notes and the extra stuff is really important before we have a roundtable.
Yeah.
So I think I think that's far enough out that we should have it back. She said 2 weeks, so we should be okay. All right, I'll entertain a motion.
I might make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Get better, Peggy.
Good night,
Get
guys.
better, Dave and Peg.
Feel better, Peg.
Thank you.
She sounds horrible.
Oh, I know, poor Peg.
Shouldn't say that, but she does.
Okay, let me shut this one off real quick.